Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Bill Belichick is back on the gridiron in college. Will this work in Chapel Hill? Also, the Knicks were knocked out of the NBA Cup. And while the rumors of trading Jimmy Butler are true or not, he isn't the face of the Heat. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The program that once employed the greatest basketball coach ever now employs maybe the greatest football coach ever. Bill Belichick, stunning the football world. He is headed to where Carolina blue, those Carolina hoodies, are going to go so hard. Isaac Shade from Locked On Tar Heels in a Carolina hoodie, rocking his full Bill Belichick right now. For those of us who are watching, Isaac, this is a crazy moment in this program, really in college football. I think everyone's still trying to make sense of it. What was your initial reaction when you saw, let's just start with the initial reporting, because I know a lot of people were just like, there's no way this is happening.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, Peter, behind the scenes, we've actually kind of known about, like, Tar Heels media has kind of known about it since last weekend at various points. Wow. And so I've had a little bit of some time to start wrapping my head around it, but it's one of those that until it actually happens, it's just like, okay, right? And so you start processing the possibility of it, but now it's like literally as we record this, it was like 20 minutes ago that North Carolina finally themselves put out a release that this is happening, 5-year contract pending board approval on Thursday morning. And so now it's time to wrap our brains around the fact that Bill Belichick, who probably has already put in a call to Drake May to figure out, what do I need to do in Chapel Hill? Where should I live? Is coming to North Carolina. He's bringing Michael Lombardi with him to be the GM. Let's hit it and let's go.
And this is one of those moments where you think, okay, we've seen this exodus from college football. You and I have talked about some of the NIL and the challenges that coaches are facing. Jeff Hafley, in the sport that I cover over on the Packers, he left college football because he wanted to coach. And it's funny that you would think an NFL coach coming to college, that would be the goal. Hey, I want to coach. So do you think he's going to lean into the recruiting part of this? He's going to pass off the recruiting part of this? Is he coming to be a teacher? Like, what do you think if you're Bill Belichick? I know it's tough to get inside the mind, but you do have the hoodie on with the short sleeves. So let's get inside the mind of the hoodie. Why is he doing this?
Oh, I am at one with Bill Belichick. Peter, here's the long game he's been playing. The whole reason he's been going on Manning Cast every Monday night is so that he can get Arch to transfer from Texas next year. Clearly, in serious answer to your question, I don't think that he's going to be heavily involved in recruiting. That's not who Bill Belichick is. He's coming here to make an NFL program. That's what he talked about on Pat McAfee's show the other day. I want to get guys where we're running an NFL program at the college level. If you're serious about what you can do or want to do, and you have the ability to do it, come to Chapel Hill and we'll get you going. That's what he has said. They're bringing in at least 30 new staffers, has been the initial reporting on Wednesday night. He's going to pass off all of that. Why? Because recruiting is so transactional now, Peter. And that's what, to me, allows someone like Bill Belichick to be successful at the college level. And where I think, even though, look, he's a spring chicken compared to Mac Brown. Mac Brown was born August 27th, 1951. Bill Belichick was born like 7 months later. Spring chicken, man. He's going to be good to go. He's going to be ready, and it's going to be great.
What's the downside here for North Carolina?
Let me quote to you. I texted some former UNC football players this evening. Let me quote to you this one, anonymously, of course. Mm-hmm. Not a fan. We need long-term stability and vision, and he can't provide that. I hope I'm wrong. I think the thing is, you've got a man that is over 70 years old replacing a man that was already 70 years old. So I think there's some distrust there probably inherently from the fan base, despite the fact of all of Bill Belichick's success.
Hey, Bill Belichick.
Right, exactly. It's Bill stinking Belichick. But how long can this be a thing, right? If you had brought in, like we learned some of the other names that were, if this had fallen through, we're talking about Tommy Rees or Georgia's defensive coordinator, Glenn Schumann, right? Like those are guys that if things go well, could be around for 2 decades. Who knows how long it would be? That is not going to be the case here. So while Bill Belichick can build a foundation, I don't think it's the long-term option. He can build the foundation that is then ultimately passed off to someone else.
Do we know at this point, some of the initial reporting suggested that Belichick's insistence was that his son would be the coach in waiting. Do we know at this point if that is something that has actually been around? And is that something that you think would even be a possibility if it were broached?
That has been a point of contention behind the scenes all week long, Peter. There's been reporting on both sides of that was a contingency that his son would be head coach in waiting. Others have flatly refuted that. And at this point, the details of it from the North Carolina side has not come out. So anything I would say is
the coach in waiting thing is not exclusive to Bill Belichick. Like plenty of coaches do this both in the football and basketball programs. Right. Like I remember Jim Boeheim did this for a long time, and then he waited so long that coach took another job because it's just like, well, how much longer am I going to wait? Like this is not a crazy ask in these sorts of negotiations. I just want to make that clear for the layperson.
And 100%. And look, to be fair, his defense has been really good this season in college football. So it's like, it's not the craziest and worst thing in the world. I think a lot of Carolina people are like, who is this potential interloper coming in? Well, look, Peter, what's the worst thing that happened? Maybe you go 500 next year, like 6-6. Guess what? Carolina just finished 6-6 this year. So you're just trading 6-6 for 6-6 at work. Like Bill Belichick's not going to come in and be unsuccessful. Right. With all the money that is being pledged, with all the staff that he's being allowed to bring in, this thing's at least you're at least going to have a slightly above 500 record. And that feels like the ground floor to me.
You can stay up to date all year on Bill Belichick's Tar Heels by subscribing. That is still so weird to say, by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Tar Heels on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. You are Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, the Knicks NBA Cup run was cut short. Before we get to that, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown are, quote, good. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And Thursday Night Football is the perfect place to start. The 49ers are hosting the Rams in the kind of game that feels like a loser leaves town match. The Niners are favored by 3 at home. FanDuel also sees a high-scoring game, total at 49.5. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. A.J. Brown had a rough go of it this past Sunday and acted, let's say, prickly after the game. Some, including teammate Brandon Graham, believed there was a fracture in Brown's relationship with quarterback Jalen Hurts. Brown attempted to dump water on that fire today.
I think that's what everybody. I think that's what the world did. You know, they perceived what I said about passing and felt like it was an attack on Jalen, and I think that's what he did. You know, me and Jalen relationship is personal, so I mean. So, yeah, I can see that.
How would you characterize your relationship with Jalen right now?
Me and his relationship are good. So,
in other college football coaching news, and that would probably qualify as anything that could possibly happen almost, West Virginia is bringing back a familiar face to man the sidelines. Rich Rodriguez is reportedly finalizing a deal to return to the Mountaineers. He experienced the most success in his coaching career with West Virginia when he coached the team from 2001 to 2007. His tenure ended when he left for Michigan in a tense split, including a legal battle over his buyout. Rodriguez has been coaching at Jacksonville State and led them to a 9-4 record each of the last 2 seasons, including a Conference USA championship win this year. And in baseball news, the Boston Red Sox are trading for the Chicago White Sox ace. If you're getting a feeling of deja vu, that's okay, though this trade isn't for Chris Sale. It's for Garrett Crochet.
The Boston Red Sox have agreed to a trade with the Chicago White Sox that will send prospects Kyle Teel, Chase Meadroth, Braden Montgomery, and Wickelman Gonzalez to Chicago for stud pitcher Garrett Crochet. Talk about doing something. The Red Sox made a statement with this move, and while it hurts to give up catching prospect Kyle Teal because the Red Sox don't have a lot of catching depth right now, both Meadroth and Montgomery would have eventually been blocked at the major league level because one's an infielder and the other's an outfielder. So due to the talent the Red Sox already have at those positions, they wouldn't really have had a place to play eventually. Garrett Crochet is 25 years old with 2 years of team control and was interested in an extension last year, so I have to believe the Red Sox wouldn't have traded for him if they didn't feel like they wanted to extend him down the road. This is a really good statement deal for the Red Sox, and the rotation just got a lot better. Tune into Locked On Red Sox on any podcast platform for more.
It's Madison Square Garden. It's the NBA Cup. So Trae Young was going to bring it, going to bring the drama for sure. The Hawks beat the Knicks 108-100. Alex Wolf from Locked On Knicks joins me now. And Alex, I am not sure there is a more hated athlete in New York right now than Trae Young. But what happened with this game? Because the Knicks have been playing some really good ball lately, but so have the Hawks.
Yeah, I think ultimately, the Hawks have this real way of sort of teaching the Knicks things about themselves. Whether it was a number of years ago now in that playoff series when they just sort of embarrassed the Knicks and exposed their whole Julius Randle-led offense for what it was, which was entirely too dependent on him as the fulcrum there, to now, just kind of being like, hey, like we've got a really lengthy, wing-heavy team that can guard pretty much anyone on the floor. I thought they looked really good in that respect. The perimeter defense I thought was fantastic. The inside calls, were a little weird. It seemed like they were letting them play a lot in this game to an extent, which I don't know if that'll happen every single game, but it is what it is in that respect. The reality is I could talk about like officiating or whatever all I want, but the Knicks ultimately kind of did this to themselves. They missed 13 straight threes, I think, at one point in this game.
11 of 42 for the game, 26%.
Yeah, just horrible. That's not something you're going to see every game from them. And yet, again, to the Hawks' credit, like they were doing a good job of getting a solid contest out on the Knicks and, getting out there. I loved Dyson Daniels coming into the draft when in his draft year, and I feel vindicated that he's turned out as good as he has in our Locked On mock draft. I think I traded up to get him with the Knicks that year. So super vindication there. But he's a special defensive player. He bothered Jalen Brunson in ways that very few players can, because even with a bigger player on him,
Jalen Brunson in this game.
Yeah, very tough. Like he's Brunson's normally able to sort of finagle those matchups and get himself a foul call here or there, or just kind of dust the guy a little bit and, put the brakes on, get a nice fall away jumper or whatever. Daniel stuck right with him. So it was a really well played game by the Hawks, and, credit to them too. The shot making was huge. And then down the stretch, they just abused the fact that the Knicks were trying to trap up top and just got like 100 backdoor cut dunks down the stretch of the game too. And clearly saw that exploit there too. So hats off to them. Honestly, they played a really good game.
We talked last time about the NBA Cup and the Knicks and their ability to use these as springboards to the rest of their season. There's a little bit more juice for these games, and the Knicks, they've got some new players that they're trying to fit in here. If you're going to go glass half full on this, what can the Knicks use from this experience as they move forward to try and build a team that expects to or hopes to contend with the Celtics and the Cavs in the Eastern Conference?
I think this was sort of a playoff atmosphere as far as the physicality that was allowed. And I don't know if the Knicks necessarily have faced that yet this year. So in that respect, I hope that they take some lessons from this of being like, hey, there are going to be some nights where like there's not going to be a ton of fouls called, and it's going to be just kind of a slugfest. And like in those games, you're going to just need to rely on shot making and, the ability to get open and all that. But on top of that, I think that it was just like a good lesson on how to face a team that is chock full of wings that can defend the crap out of you. And they're going to need to get more creative, I think. They're still, to the Knicks' credit, I guess, I think there's one player that was conspicuously absent in this game that I thought really could have made a difference, which was Mitchell Robinson, who has yet to suit up this year. So maybe that's how they ultimately find their ultimate version of themselves. Cat got in a little bit of foul trouble in this game. And after that happened, it seemed like they had a really hard time kind of getting the rope again. And I think that having that stabilizing presence of Mitchell Robinson would have been helpful. They wound up having to turn to some Jericho Sims minutes in the fourth quarter, which I don't think was at all what Tibbs wanted to do. But, you're still dealing with like Precious Achiuwa coming back from an injury of his own. So he, I think, was getting a little gassed. And, that sort of led to some of the issues down the stretch here, too, of not being able to kind of claw their way back into this game. But the big thing, yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't worry too much about like that they're going to have their confidence shook or anything by the fact they didn't win this game. Unlike last year where they had to face, I think it was the Celtics and then the Bucks in the in-season tournament. This year, now at least they have a relatively easy fallback going to face the Magic, who are pretty injury depleted at the moment. And a team that
they fought tooth and nail at the Bucks the other night.
Yeah, they did. They did, to their credit. But it is a team that the Knicks recently beat. So, maybe they're able to go in there and just kind of get the ship righted again. But either way, yeah, it was again, I would say the best word for this game is humbling. It's like this team has a great offense, but it's not unbeatable. And I think we saw that in this game.
You can stay up to date all year on the New York Knicks by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Knicks on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, Jimmy Butler is easier to trade because he isn't the face of the Heat anymore. Rumors are swirling that Jimmy Butler is being shopped by the Heat for potential trades. Coach Eric Spoelstra said that's gibberish. Locked On Heat host Wes Goldberg said he believes Miami isn't actively trying to trade Butler, but he also points out something crucial about this circumstance, that Butler is not the star of this team, or at least not the face of this franchise.
I don't know that that's, again, happening with Jimmy Butler. I don't think that the Heat are down that road to the point where they're aggressively shopping Jimmy. I do think that the part of Jimmy Butler, like the Heat being open to listening to offers for Jimmy Butler, I do think that that's true. And we'll see where that ends up. We'll see where that leads the Miami Heat to. But Jimmy Butler used to be one of these players where you just hung up the phone and you said, absolutely not. He's our franchise icon. We're not going to trade him. But if you've noticed the language around the Miami Heat lately, the franchise icon is no longer Jimmy Butler. Bam Adebayo is the franchise icon. Dwayne Wade's talking about Bam Adebayo in his speech at the statue ceremony. The Miami Heat have named Bam Adebayo the captain of the team. This is Bam's team. This is Bam's franchise. He is the face of the franchise. And I think Bam would be much harder to trade, would be much harder for the Heat to trade, rather, than Jimmy Butler at this point. And when I say that, that is all I mean, okay?
Look, far be it for me to tell a Heat fan who the face of their franchise is. But when you go back and you look and you watch the Heat play over the last half decade, and you see who the guy is taking all the big shots, who's making every play in crunch time, who is leading his team, at least offensively, almost single-handedly, it's Jimmy Butler. So whether he's the face of the franchise, I almost don't care. Maybe Bam Adebayo is the torch bearer for this franchise, but part of that is because Jimmy Butler is much older. And so sure, Bam is the face of the future. He is the touchstone for this team, let's call it. You can't run offense through him. Not really. Not the way you can run offense through Jimmy Butler or even Tyler Hero. And yes, Bam Adebayo is one of the best defensive players in the league, but he's not a one-man floor raiser the way that someone like Rudy Gobert is. So maybe he is the franchise's player. If that's the case, then that's all the more reason to trade Jimmy Butler, because this franchise is not going anywhere as currently constructed, if that's what's happening. And finally, Joe Burrow's least favorite part about his home being burglarized has nothing to do with what might have been stolen. He said, I feel like my privacy has been violated in more ways than one, and way more is already out there than I would want out there and that I care to share. Burrow has gone through great lengths during his career to protect his privacy. We live a public life, Burrow said. One of my least favorite parts of that is the lack of privacy. And that has been difficult for me to deal with my entire career. What I take away from this is Burrow's trying to will the Bengals into the playoffs. And if for no other reason than he continued to be very, very busy and not have to deal with the media or let them know anything. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, will the Niners or Rams be on the outside looking in of the NFC playoff picture? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.